I'm Mike Belcito, co-founder of eFuneral, and I want to talk for a few minutes about a topic that is incredibly important. In fact, it's the topic of death and dying and why we need to talk about this topic and not avoid it. In fact, there was a post recently in the Huffington Post about why we need to talk about death and dying, and it was written by Judith Johnson. We thought that the post was so well written and so important that we requested and received permission from Judith Johnson to republish that article in our eFuneral resources section. So you can find that at efuneral.com/resources. But it's certainly the inspiration for this video as well, because I want you, as you're watching this video, to think about this topic and think about a few facts first, which is, first of all, 80% of Americans actually don't put their personal affairs in order before they die. Think about that for a moment. 80%. So what that means is 80% of families that are dealing with the loss of a loved one, now not only are they dealing with that loss, but they're dealing with trying to put the pieces together to figure out that individual's personal affairs. And that just makes an already incredibly difficult task all the more difficult. So that's something, that's a fact. That's actually something that exists right now, 80% of families. The other thing to consider is most of us really don't have any idea how to discuss the reality of death with our loved ones. There's been some surveys that have gone out in the past, and most people say that they don't know how to have that conversation. So think about that. Think about if you've had the conversation about death and dying with your loved one. Do you know what they would want? Do they know what you would want to have happen? Those are things that you need to start thinking about right now. And there's reasons. One of the reasons is, first of all, there are cost implications. Now, we've talked in the past about the cost of a funeral service. It's over $7,700 on average, but it can run between $10,000 to $15,000. Not only that, having something like a living will, incredibly important. Actually, only would take a few $100s to get a living will produced. However, when somebody passes away and they don't have a will, the legal fees can really start to rack up. It can be several $1,000s for that legal professional to really figure out how things should be divided among whether it's family members or what have you. So, but more than just costs, the reality is your loved ones are going to be dealing with you, or vice versa. You will be dealing with your loved ones, and you're going to have to figure out all those details. So a few minutes of a serious conversation now can really be so important, and what it can do is it can avoid days, if not weeks or more, of strain because the conversation was never had, and so now individuals are trying to figure out what to do. So if you've shared with your loved one what you want when you die, what are the pieces of your financial affairs that need to get in order? What are your requests as it relates to a funeral? What are other requests that maybe have to do with your will? If you've had these conversations with your family members, it will just cause so much less strain in the future. So that's certainly something to consider, is that having that conversation now can really save heartache later. And ultimately, what you want should actually happen, right? So when you pass away or your loved one passes away, whatever those wishes were, you want them to actually happen. You want them to take place. So your family's actions at that point in time should really reflect the wishes of your loved ones or you. But if they don't even know what it is that you want, if you were to pass away, then that's going to be something that's incredibly difficult. So what I would suggest is find some time on your own, maybe a quiet afternoon, or maybe it's a rainy morning, and start to really think about, gosh, what are those things that I should be talking about with my family as it relates to end of life, and how can I bring this conversation up? And even if it takes you a few days, few weeks, or a few months. It's important that you work yourself up to ultimately have that conversation, and a giant weight will be taken off of your shoulders at that point, I think you'll find, and ultimately in the long run, it will be helpful for everybody. So again, this is a topic that maybe not everybody likes to talk about, but it's an incredibly important one, and important enough where we wanted to not only post Judith Johnson's article, but also create a video that kind of further elaborates. So for more information, again, feel free to visit eFuneral.com/resources, or to check out other videos, you could go to our official YouTube page at youtube.com/eFuneralResources.